like to give you a little bit of background on myself as an artist before I go into the bodies of work that I created for the Sindhu project. I was born in Punjab, India. In 2011, I moved to the United States, and art became like a language for me to stay connected to my roots. In a way, I talk about it like, art became the way to express my mood, which is a word in Hindi for roots. I am a textile graduate from the National Institute of Fashion Technology, and I have worked in the textile industry for almost a decade. And by virtue of interest, I have traveled into the length and breadth of the rural map of India, looking at the indigenous weaves, then the passion for textiles moved into interest in crafts, and then that moved into tribal arts. And then in 2013, I landed myself into the prehistoric cave paintings in central India. And that would become the foundation of my process as an artist. So a lot of mediums are inspired from that particular palette, and then of course, to give form to my further language and the subjects that I'm interested in, I keep adding the mediums to tell my story. So I want to talk a little bit about the mediums and how I approach them. Mediums for me are basically, mediums and processes for me are basically a way to give a form to the subject that I'm trying to put forward. In that sense, I'd like to read out a quote that allow the mediums in the process to tell their own story. In that sense, I surrender to the nuances presented by the medium and allow for the contingencies of the environment to participate in the rendering. In this play, the technique finds itself in light of what has stayed with me about the subject. I call it the doing of non-doing. This particular thought will come forward as we talk about the works in the Sindhu project, because I have taken, my whole aim was not to create physical specimens of the Indus. I basically wanted to do the, with the help of the mediums, I wanted to take a journey into my personal roots and, explore this era from a standpoint of an individual. So moving forward, what is exactly the Indus Valley civilization? The Indus Valley civilization, stretches between the northwestern part of India, most of Pakistan, and northeastern part of Afghanistan. It was the first urban civilization of the Indian subcontinent that flourished around the Sindhu watershed between 3000 BCE to 1800 BCE. It was an important human development of the Near East and South Asia that existed parallelly to the Egyptian and the Mesopotamian civilizations. Now, life around the Indus River has existed for many thousands of years, but the reason why the Indus Valley civilization is key is because of the way it became the fulcrum of the life and our value system and a culture of countries of South Asia. So today's talk, I will be focusing on what inspired the bodies of work, what mediums that were taken from the Indus times were used to express my personal journey. A chance visit to Gujarat, like I was telling you that I was very interested in textiles. I was invited by a weaver to Gujarat, Bhuj, Gujarat, and Dholavira, the excavation site of the Indus Valley, happens to be very close to it. The weaver on the right hand side, Dinesh Bhai, was the one who basically directed me to Dholavira. Now, these are some of the images of Dholavira while I was there, taken by me. Now, while the guide walked us through, the key features of this civilization, it is known for its superior city planning, the grid structures, the water reservoirs. What really struck with me were these pottery shards that were scattered around the area, and to me, it felt that these pottery shards were once a complete pot, and that there was life happening through this pot. And a part of me, wanted to now complete this pot. And while I was thinking about the pot, my thought went to the fact that, the pot now became an analogy for the land, and the Indus became a complete entity. And I thought to myself that, this pot represents a complete civilization that is now divided into these three countries. And particularly what stood out for me were two countries, India and Pakistan, because of the history that we've had. Now, I remember around the same time in 2017, I went through an exhibit which was called the Shared Legacies, and I was trying to chart my family history on a migration map. And it felt to me that, in terms of distance, there wasn't a very long distance that we had taken, but in our minds it was a unfathomably long distance that we had made. And these became the initial thoughts of before I conceived this body of work, which would take, from 2017 to now to be conceived. Now, the mediums that I've used for the Sindhu project, the mediums, and I will talk about them and how they relate to this Indus Valley as we go further in the presentation. The mediums that I used are clay, whether it is moist or powdered as pigment. There is cotton, muslin, and kala cotton, which is an old world cotton, very incidentally also spun by Dinesh Bhai, who I just introduced earlier in the presentation. Old world cotton is a hand-spun, hand-woven cotton. Then riverwed soil, because we're talking about a journey of a river. Then organic pigments like turmeric that I used. Wasli handmade paper is used, which is basically a paper that is used to make miniature paintings. And then there is mulberry paper. Talking about the first series. The first series is called What Remains, as you go downstairs and have a view of the exhibition. The series is called What Remains, and the mediums that we use here are clay and color cotton. Now, What Remains is inspired by the indeciphered Indus script, whereby now what I've done is that I have looked at the script for many number of days, and then I have memorized the Indus numeric system, and then I've hidden it. And then I've scribbled it out of memory. Now, what the compositions came through were something that is between what is actual, what was adapted, what was lost, and what remains, in the sense that once the script is written, then I have destroyed it, or I have gashed it down, and I have broken it down. So a closer look at the script would be here. And the script is broken, and then it is covered with terracotta dust. Now, terracotta or clay over here, and I may want to move back, is one of the key, Indus Valley civilization is basically synonymous to terracotta. It's one of the symbols of the Indus Valley civilization, whether it is in the form of terracotta figurines or it is in the form of earthen pottery. So that's where that inspiration of the medium comes from. And then the cotton base, basically cotton was known to be first cultivated in the Indus times. So that's where the cotton comes from. Having a look at all the three mediums here. This is the process of the making when the terracotta was converted into, these scribbles and then put down on the panels, and how the composition was formed. Talking about the next series, which is a very related series called the Age Drawings, again inspired by the Indus script, and it could also take you to the city structures. Here I've used turmeric, which is known to be first cultivated during the Indus times as a medium, and I've used the poor colophas, aspect of turmeric to use as an aspect of aging, in the sense that there are two surfaces that are in clay, and there is a surface on top which marks the surface on the bottom, and then the one surface becomes the physical and the other surface becomes the shadow. And over time, there's a whole interplay between the past and the present and the real and the shadow, and the composition continues to age over time. So this whole aspect of aging and time and impermanence comes through the series. Going forward, the next series is called the brick, where the medium used is clay. Now, brick, again, this whole is really synonymous to this whole idea of foundation or mool, which is a larger, kind of investigation that I'm trying to do through this project. And again, Indus civilization was known for its, superior, urban planning, and it started with what was the brick. And Professor Kinoy would probably throw more light on it, and I learned it from him that the brick in that time was made to the ratio of 4:2:1, and I've tried to make these bricks in my studio in Chicago. They're handmade and then sun-dried, and then they're eroded with river water, and then they're covered with riverbed soil. So this whole concept of foundation of the river, of the participation of the riverbed soil all comes into play to convey this whole process, this whole idea of the roots that these bricks stand for me. These are some of the images of the bricks at Dholavira, the brick walls. This is a detail into my work at the bricks that you will see downstairs when you go. The next series is dig drawings. This is made basically on the vasli paper that is used to make miniature drawings. The medium used here is riverbed soil. What is interesting here is that the river soil is now collected from the Des Plaines here, Des Plaines River right here in Chicago, and it helps me to almost bridge my kind of distance between my home and roots in India and my current home in Chicago. What is interesting about the series is that I have dug the vasli paper using riverbed soil, and what is the tool that has been used to dig is pottery shards that have been collected from all through India, particularly around the sites that I have traveled, the Indus Valley sites of Dholavira and Sangol. These are the surfaces that came through in the dig drawings. Now the dig drawings, again, if I may go back to and remind you of the prehistoric technique that I shared in the beginning of my presentation, inspired by the prehistoric works. It follows the same technique, but it now kind of lends down to the subject that I'm trying to profess. This particular series, the next one, is called the dig structures, which is exactly the same process but now done on terracotta tiles. This seeks inspiration from the Indus seals, these tiles, which were made in terracotta and then scribbled upon. And also these incisions, if you may look back, was the beginning of writing. The writing basically began as incisions that would happen, and periodically over a period of time, the number of incisions that were repeating ultimately became the script. Again, the digging here has happened through the pottery shards that have been collected from all through India. Going forward, the next series is called Broken Hole. In somewhere, a few minutes back, I mentioned about these pottery shards that I, was attracted towards in the sites that I visited. Now here, the pottery shards are taken as a complete, as an inspiration, and I've tried to, in my mind as an artist, try to complete the pot. Now these tiles that you see are basically, symbolic for a complete pot and also for a land. And basically these tiles are then broken, and then they are covered with terracotta dust. So basically I'm trying to, express my feeling about the fact that, when you look at these tiles, what do you see? Do you see the pot, do you see the land, or do you see both? So in a way, the pot became a symbolic version about the land. The mediums that I used here are terracotta, both in moist form and as dust. So both as a pot and as a land, earth that was used to cover it. This is the process of making the broken hole in the studio. And if you see, this whole exhibition is conceived in a very modular form, in the way that after the South Asia Institute, the exhibition is going to be divided between India and Pakistan. We'll be showing in Lahore and Delhi. And the way we've conceived the works is that half of the works will be going to Pakistan and half will be going to Delhi, in a way that both Mahvish's and my works are going to be traveling to both locations. And this particular body of work is a fine example of that, because if you see these two tiles, there are two tiles, and they come together as one single tile. So half of the tile will be going to Pakistan and the other half will be going to India. So people of both the countries will be able to, through the absence of these tiles, you'll be able to see what would it look like to see this tile complete, or what would it look like to see vision of the land complete or the pot complete. Moving on to the last series, which is called the void structures, which has been the most laborious of all the series. This particular series takes the medium's use of is muslin cotton that has been collected from various parts of India. The inspiration here comes from the voids that I saw in both the excavation sites that I visited, and the voids here, stand for this mystery that still, lies about the civilization. That is, a lot about it is still unknown. So if you look at these voids closely, it's almost like these deep, dark, bottomless holes that are dug into muslin one by one, layer after layer. And again, like I said, that they connote the mystery that still forms around the civilization. So that is about my body of work around this series, and I hope you guys look closely at it when you go downstairs to look at the works. I would like to finish the presentation by saying that both Mahavish and I feel that a need for these kind of projects to happen in the future, because we really feel that there is a lot that keeps us together than what keeps us apart. In the end, I would just like to dedicate this presentation to all the artisans and craftsmen of all the three countries, India, Pakistan and Afghanistan, who've kept the Indus alive through their technique and through their ways of life. I hope we continue to look at their contribution, and I hope we continue to support them. Thank you.